eminent theatre personality in the form of Dr. Supant Bhattacharya. Dr. Supant Bhattacharya is professor of English, and he is also the director of the PG program in HISLOP College, Nagpur. A very eminent academician and a very popular theatre person. He has acted in over 150 plays in English, Hindi, Bangla, and Marathi. And what is more important, he has portrayed the roles of some eminent Shakespearean characters such as Claudius, Malvolio, Puck, and Shylock on the stage. We all know him as a very popular quizmaster as well. He has conducted something like 5 national inter-university quiz competitions. A poet, he edits this journal called Rhythmics. He has won the poetry prize of a competition conducted by the British Council and Poetry Society of India. He has published, his poems have been published in many anthologies. Needless to say that he has presented and published several research papers in national and international journals. What is more important here, that he has translated the plays of Mahesh Elkunchwar into English, and it has been published by Oxford, India. I would request all the participants, if you can lay your hands on this collection. It is a wonderful set of collection of plays of Mahesh Elkunchwar translated into English. Do go through it. And without wasting much of our time, I would like to invite Dr. Supant Bhattacharya to deliver his talk on Shakespeare in popular culture from stage to screen. Sir, the stage is all yours.
Thank you, Karthik. Then, as the bard says, all the world's a stage. Yeah.
Sure, so, sir.
Thanks for all those kind and lovely words. Good morning, friends. At the onset, a big thank you to the organizers of the 3 colleges, Shakespeare Society of India, my teacher, Dr. Pranati Chakraborty, my friend, Dr. Usha Sakude, my head of the department, Dr. Veena Joseph, principal of my college, principals of other colleges. Thank you so much for having me here, and thank you, audience. So let's begin. I'll just again share my screen. I hope.
Yes, sir. Yes.
Yeah, this is the title slide.
Absolutely fine, sir. Please proceed. Yeah. Please proceed.
So this is the opening slide, the title slide, Shakespeare from stage to screen. Although I hope all right. So as we know, if there is one particular thing which has clearly placed Shakespeare in the international sphere, it is the worldwide growth. I might say the exponential growth of films based on his large screen or OTT, mobile forms, whatever, you name it. But there has been a massive spurt in visual content based on Shakespeare's work in the last couple of decades. And this spurt is not just limited to England or America, but also diverse cultures across the globe are turning to Shakespeare and film to express themselves. Of course, this is in a way inevitable because Shakespeare has been the most widely read, translated, and performed single author in history ever. And he's, of course, now the most filmed author too. And not just, as I said, not just celluloid, a range of digital platforms, digital screens and media have also adopted Shakespeare like a long lost son. Shakespeare and the visual, the moving image, they seem to have a symbiotic relationship. They seem to increasingly feed into each other. And some of the cinematic resurgence uh, is the outcome of the evolving dynamics of the film industry, as we all know. Last 1 or 2 decades, thanks to AI, thanks to online platforms, the entertainment industry, the visual entertainment industry, has undergone a massive transformation, and the growth of multiplexes, the corporatization of finance, development of OTT technology, but above all, academically, for us academics, I think it's the establishment of film studies, and in particular the sub discipline of Shakespeare film studies, which has conferred a kind of canonical status to these commercial ventures. Indian adaptations. Uh, Shakespeare on film and media is definitely one of the fastest growing and challenging subfields in Shakespeare studies. However, interest in the range of international Shakespeare films has been slow to take off. Mostly, Shakespeare studies deals with English adaptations of Shakespeare's work in the English language. But interest in the in international adaptations of Shakespeare, that interest has somehow surprisingly been strangely lacking, or not as what shall I say, not as globally widespread as the interest in English adaptation. And of course, this embedded conservatism towards what constitutes the authentic Shakespeare has relegated a vast number of innovative foreign reappraisals of Shakespeare on film into the margin of this new discipline. Among the several cinemas of the world, the Indian Shakespeare film was virtually invisible on the global map, except maybe to a few hardcore aficionados, few hardcore followers of Indian cinema. It was virtually unknown in Shakespeare film history and criticism. There's this canonical book, A History of Shakespeare on Screen by Kenneth Rothwell, 1999, which incorporates virtually all the movies based on Shakespeare across the globe. But this book, surprisingly, lists only 5 films for what has been for many years the largest film industry in the world. An industry which began in 1913, thanks to people like Dada Saheb Phalke and D.G. Sen and others, and now produces almost 2,000 films a year. In fact, according to CBFC, the Central Board of Film Certification, in 2023 alone, 3,847 feature films, that's almost 4,000 films, 4,000 feature films were produced in 2023, last year, in 43 languages alone, in 43 languages of the country. And however, it's very surprising that in spite of this massive output, international interest in Indian cinema until recently has been confined only to the art films, the serious parallel films of people like these maestros, Satyajit Ray, Mrinal Sen, Ritvik Ghatak, Adur Gopal Krishnan, G. Aravindan, Girish Kasaravelli, and other parallel filmmakers. However, what brought the Shakespearean cinema of India into international attention were definitely, unquestionably, the films of Vishal Bhardwaj, the trilogy, the Shakespeare trilogy of Vishal Bhardwaj, Maqbool, Omkara, and Haidar. Other than these, Indian Shakespearean adaptations on screen have remained virtually in the areas of darkness of international critical discourse. And although last 4 or 5 years there has been a boom in writings about Bollywood and Indian cinema in general, This was, of course, catalyzed by the starting of various film courses, film studies, and South Asian cultural department. But yet, very few extended studies have been made of the Indian Shakespeare film. I would be mentioning a few in the course of my talk. So today, what I propose to do in my talk is to kind of, if somebody's microphone is switched on, could you please switch it off?
Uh, uh,
It's okay. Now it's stopped. One book which I must mention in this regard is a study by Professor Poonam Trivedi and Paromita Chakraborty. Five 115 titles of feature films establishing a canon of Indian Shakespeare film. And starting from the earliest movie, 1923 to 2016. Of course, it needs to be updated now because it's almost a decade old. 2016 it was brought out. And they unearthed many movies in the process of this research. And these authors show that 18 plays have been adapted on Indian cinemas in 13 different languages. The largest number of adaptations, no surprises here, largest number of adaptations was Romeo and Juliet, and 17 adaptations of Romeo and Juliet, with the Taming of the Shrew coming a close second with 16 adaptations, and Hamlet coming third with 12 versions. 25 films which incorporate scenes, characters, citations, or close resonances from Shakespeare have also been listed in this book. And this list underlines the multifarious presence of Shakespeare in Indian films. And the book also demonstrates that Indian cinemas contain the largest corpus of Shakespeare films in the world. And another book I would like to refer to here is a book by one of the managers of Shakespeare's Globe Theatre, Andrew Dixon. Andrew Dixon wrote this fascinating book called Worlds Elsewhere. Worlds Elsewhere, Journeys Across Shakespeare's Globe, in which he asserts, Andrew Dixon, I'll quote Andrew Dixon here, Andrew Dixon asserts, there are more versions of Shakespeare in India. There are more versions of Shakespeare in Indian cinema than anywhere else on the globe. And the filmography in the Trivedi Chakravarti book also reveals the many complex and creative dimensions of the encounter between Shakespeare and various cultures across India over a century. And maybe future scholars could refer to these works and explore um, the further cross currents between Shakespeare and the indigenous cultures. Uh, the first Shakespeare film globally, worldwide, the first Shakespeare film came very, very early, 1899. It was a short extract of a theatrical performance of King John by the noted director and actor Sir Beerbohm Tree. And Sir Beerbohm Tree's King John was filmed in, I think about 10 or 12 minutes of it was filmed in the year 1899, the very year that the Lumiere brothers invented cinema. And the first sound full-length feature appeared in 1929, The Taming of the Shrew, directed by Sam Taylor. But the Shakespeare film per se emerged very slowly and intermittently. This was because Shakespeare was not considered fit material for the box office in Hollywood until the 1940s or 1950s. And in England, cinema was not considered a fit artistic medium capable of capturing or embodying the bard's work. Consequently, only a handful of films were produced in the early years. And in the companion to Shakespearean cinema, Cambridge Companion to Shakespearean Cinema, the editor, Russell Jackson, he notes, I quote, relative to the total output of the various producers, there have not been many Shakespeare films in the English speaking cinema. Unquote. European and world cinemas, however, were freer to appropriate Shakespeare. And Indian cinemas too were quick to exploit this rich resource. Based on current information, up to the 1950s, uh, 24 films on Shakespeare's plays were made in India, which included, interestingly, 7 silent films of considerable length. And this is very, very interesting. The world's first full length talkie of Hamlet is Indian. This film was called Khoon Ka Khoon, and it was produced and directed by Sohrab Modi. Sohrab Modi was considered the dialogue king of the silent of the black and white era. And I remember having seen this film on Doordarshan. And this is an entire, I mean, all the characters, Hamlet is called Hamlet, Gertrude is Gertrude. But I remember this lovely scene where Hamlet comes to meet Gertrude, and Gertrude, she forgets the fact that she's supposed to be a Danish queen, and she refers to her son Hamlet as Hemu. All right. Hemu, ye tune kya kiya, she says. And I remember I was watching it with my family, and my father and I literally rolled over with laughter. That Gertrude suddenly, very endearingly, refers to Hamlet as Hemu. But then, this is how Shakespeare is appropriated in across cultures. So this was the first ever talkie adaptation of Hamlet anywhere, full-length talkie adaptation of Hamlet anywhere in the world. Khoon Ka Khoon. And also the first ever full-length adaptation of Comedy of Errors. Comedy of Errors. This was a Bengali adaptation called Bhranti Bilas. Bhranti Bilas, and interestingly, the novel on which this was based, Bhranti Bilas, the novelized version of the play was carried out by Ishwar Chandra Vidyasagar, the great social reformer. So this was Bhranti Bilas came in 1963, adaptation of Comedy of Errors. Uttam Kumar plays the master twins, and Bhanu Bandyopadhyay, he plays the servant twins, the Dromios and the Antipoluses. It was directed by Manu Sen. And this fact that the first adaptation of a comedy and Shakespeare's greatest work, Hamlet, both were in India, this was sadly ignored in the Western Academy. While cinematic experimentations with Shakespeare continued, it is since the 2000s, in the 21st century, that Indian cinema has shown a kind of an efflorescence of Shakespeare, and partly inspired by the Shakespeare film Renaissance in the West. Throughout this long history, films in the major Indian languages have adapted and embedded Shakespeare's plots, characters, scenes, and dialogue in a variety of genres and modes for local audiences. Beginning with historicals, melodramas, romantic comedies, family socials, stunt action dramas, political satire, and even mythologicals or art films, extending to docudramas and diasporic independent and television films, Shakespeare is now to be found everywhere. Shakespeare has been, quote unquote, translated, like Nick Botton claims in Midsummer Night's Dream. He has been translated. He actually means transformed. So, in that same sense, Shakespeare has been translated and transformed in mind boggling Indianized shades and shapes. While a few of these adaptations they do approximate to the original text, most of the films show a very very varied degrees of transculturation, transformation, and citation. In keeping with the unique template of popular Indian cinema, many of these Shakespearean adaptations they incorporate songs and dance numbers. All right, what would Indian films be without their song and dance sequences? And many of these adaptations were extremely successful at the box office, and we will be looking at some of these adaptations, popularizing Shakespeare, often without the audience even realizing that this is Shakespeare they are watching. And this was very like the early Indian theatrical adaptation. Often Parsi theatre of Gujarat and Bombay, they would often adapt Shakespeare into giving it a new title, and the audience would be completely in the dark that this is Shakespeare they are watching. So something similarly was done even in India. Internationally and nationally, Indian cinema and even Indian culture to some extent is today considered synonymous with this term, Bollywood. I personally don't like this term. It's very derivative. I mean, why do we should call this Indian Hindi film industry? Why borrow a term from Hollywood? But then it is here to stay. So whether we like it or we don't, the Hindi film industry based in Mumbai is called Bollywood. And not surprisingly, the current academic discourse also has exclusively directed its attention at Bollywood. And Bollywood is now held to be the norm, and other non-Bollywood films are supposed to be the departures. This term has acquired a wide coinage, and although the cloning implication, the fact that it is borrowed from Hollywood, should not be forgotten. In the globalized world of the media, the term has come to represent a kind of a brand, a particular Indian film style, a film style which is a mixture of realism and fantasy, melodrama and lush musicality, and an international fashion and glamour. All these are ideas which are associated with the term Bollywood. However, film scholars have been disturbed by the fact that this term has led to the eraser, eraser and academic neglect of the 13 full-fledged national regional language cinemas in India. Hindi, of course, is the largest spoken language. I believe around 54% first language speakers, according to the last census. And it is a designated national language along with English. Therefore, its cinematic dominance is numerically accountable. But regional film industries also cater primarily to their own language constituencies. And each film industry has a distinct cultural identity and a historical graph, a historical trajectory. And each industry has its own modes of financing and production. Furthermore, these cinemas have been in keen competition with each other. Bengali cinema, being closest to center of power in the colonial period, began very early in the Hiralal Sen and Pramathesh Barua and all those pioneers. Ensured that Bengali cinema flourished in the 1920s and 30s, and it developed its distinct profile influenced by Bengali literature. Marathi cinema, which was the first to initiate production in 1913, Dadasaheb Phalke and Raja Harishchandra, we all know. Marathi cinema, however, suffered from the proximity of Hindi cinema, proximity to Hindi cinema in Mumbai. Uh, Malayalam cinema has generated more art films, more serious cinema, inspired by world film than any other regional cinema. And in the last 5 or 6 years, Malayalam cinema has really come into its own. The kind of experimentation, the kind of innovations that are being done in Malayalam cinema are probably streets ahead compared to any other industry. I can speak definitely of Bengali cinema. Bengali cinema, unfortunately, has lagged behind, fallen behind after people like Ray died and Rituparna Ghosh died. But Malayalam cinema has taken massive leaps. And today we can, if there is one regional film industry we can be really proud of, it's Malayalam cinema. And since 1979 or early 80s, Tamil and Telugu cinemas have been producing more films every year than even the Hindi film industry. Some of these cinemas are especially vibrant today, bigger and more trend-setting than Hindi cinema. Telugu cinema has had an unprecedented box office success with the global release, as you know, of Bahubali, its sequel Bahubali 2, and RRR. And these three together have apparently grossed around $500 million worldwide, which is astronomical. All right, something even Hollywood would be proud of. $500 million worldwide, three films. Regional movies in India, which have been overshadowed by Hindi films' discursive dominance, must be foregrounded at the earliest. All these cinemas, Malayalam, Bengali, Tamil, Telugu, Kannada, all right, they have all embraced Shakespeare too. But because they usually lie outside the circuit of international film festivals and distribution networks, the regional Indian Shakespeare film has been mostly invisible in scholarly discussion. What is the task of film academics today? We have to redress this imbalance. Film academics must now focus on these regional cinemas and bring their particular histories of literary and theatrical engagement with Shakespeare into a larger and more interactive picture. Scholars today must not only detail the larger context of the development of regional cinema, but also pay specific attention to the specific modes or local habitations. This book I was referring to by Tripathi and Chakrabarti, called Shakespeare and Indian Cinemas. The subtitle they use is Local Habitations, which means the local flavor which Shakespeare acquires once he is adapted into the culture of a particular region. Local habitations through which Shakespeare has been absorbed in the diverse cultures of India. Regional films, however, have always existed on a kind of a dialectical tension with the national or pan-Indian Hindi cinema. At the industrial level, there has always been a very robust symbiotic relationship between Bollywood and regional cinemas. uh, Technicians and film professionals, actors, they have very comfortably switched between their own state cinema industry and Bollywood. And nowadays, maybe from around 2010 onward, there has been a great increase in the number of remakes of films from one Indian language to another and from an Indian language to Hindi, and also vice versa, from Hindi to regional languages. Uh, okay, these are some of the adaptations of Romeo and Juliet. Uh, Even these niche Shakespeare films reflect these developing tendencies of the Indian cinemas. For instance, the history of Romeo and Juliet. All right, this is Franco Zeffirelli's Romeo and Juliet, and these are the various adaptations. One of the earliest adaptations was the Telugu version, Maro Charitra. Maro Charitra was later remade into Ek Duje Ke Liye. Kamal Hassan still remained Romeo, but the heroine changed. In Maro Charitra, it was Sarita, and Ek Duje Ke Liye, it was Rati Agnihotri. Other versions followed suit. Kayamat Se Kayamat Tak came in 1988, launched the careers of Amir and Juhi Chawla as the Shakespearean star-crossed lovers. Then we had Josh, which was more an adaptation of the West Side Story, which was a musical based on Romeo and Juliet. And Ishaqzade, again, a modern retelling of this violent love story. And above all, the blockbuster hit that was Sanjay Leela Bhansali's Goliyon Ka Ras Leela, Ram Leela. But on the regional front, there came Sairat in 2016, and Sairat did so brilliantly well. It was a very well-made film, and there was a kind of a freshness to this Nagraj Manjule film with these new pairs, and it did so phenomenally well that remakes were immediately made in Hindi, Kannada, Telugu, Punjabi, Malayalam, and Tamil. In 1949 came Guna Sundari Katha, an adaptation of King Lear. Had MG Ramachandran, in the lead, and it was so successful that it was remade in Tamil in 1955. In 19, and this is another adaptation of King Lear, Rituparno Ghosh's Last Lear, which is based, Last Lear itself is based on an Utpal Dutt adaptation of King Lear, something like Nata Samrat. What Kusumagraj did with Nata Samrat, so Utpal Dutt did with King Lear. He called it Ajker Shah Jahan. Ajker Shah Jahan was remade into The Last Year by Rituparno Ghosh, featuring Amitabh Bachchan as a Shakespearean actor. Marma Yogi. Marma Yogi 1951 was a Tamil version of Macbeth. And it was immediately, that same year, 1951, it was reshot in Hindi as Ek Tha Raja. Ek Tha Raja again had N.G. Ramchandran playing King Lear. Probably the most favorite of Shakespeare films. This is top panel you see a film called Ulta Pulta, Ulta Palta. This is made in 1997. This was a version of Comedy of Errors remade into Telugu. And then I have already mentioned to Bhranti Bilas. Bhranti Bilas, translated by Ishwar Chandra Vidyasagar, was made into a Bengali film featuring Uttam Kumar and Bhanu Bandyopadhyay as the two twins. Soon this was made into Hindi called Hindi version called Do Duni Char. Kishore Kumar and Asit Sen played the master servant duo. And then this eternal favorite, all of you I'm sure must have watched it n number of times. This is Gulzar's Angoor. Sanjeev Kumar plays the Antiophilus, senior Antiophilus and junior Antiophilus, and Devin Verma plays the servant, Romeo, senior Romeo and junior Romeo. And this is probably the only Indian film in which Shakespeare makes an appearance. As the film ends, a character asks, "My God, two pairs of twins. Who could have imagined this?" And the last shot of the film is the camera focusing on a portrait hanging from the wall, and this portrait is none other than William Shakespeare. And he points a finger at himself and winks, suggesting that only he could have thought of such a story. And then very recently in 2022, there was this extremely forgettable version of Comedy of Errors called Circus, one of Ranveer Singh's absolutely abominably terrible works. Otherwise, he's a fine actor. Today, films are being dubbed into different Indian languages for wider circulation and even being shot simultaneously in multiple languages. Another technique that filmmakers are using, they're using a pan-Indian cast. Actors are being, actors from the Hindi film industry, they are being incorporated into regional industries so to gain, to have better accessibility. For instance, take this film, Veeram. Veeram is a 2016 adaptation of Macbeth. But one of the finest adaptations of Shakespeare you shall ever see by the director's name is Jayan. It's available on Amazon Prime. And Veeram incorporates Kalari Payuttu, it incorporates Malayalam myths. But the interesting thing about Veeram is it was shot simultaneously in Malayalam, Hindi, and English. So modern technology is overcoming the linguistic regional compartmentalization in the industry and thus helping film circulation and business, commerce. Pan-Indian distribution and marketing of regional films is challenging Hindi cinema. If you remember last year, there was this big debate between Ajay Devgan and this Kannada actor, I think Sujit. Don't remember his name, but there was this big debate whether South Indian films should be dubbed in Hindi or distributed and displayed with subtitles. Because Hindi cinema is definitely feeling insecure thanks to the onrush of these extremely superlative South Indian films. Multilingual filmmaking is also targeting the different linguistic groups among the diasporic Indians abroad. Indians are said to contribute the largest number of film goers put together anywhere in the world. So cinematic technologies today, they are questioning the broad identification of Hindi cinema with the nation. Hindi cinema is equal to Indian cinema. Now that is being challenged by regional cinema. And the boundaries of linguistic identity are now increasingly being blurred. And the categories of local, regional, and national identities are now becoming more subtle and more challenging. Uh, what needs to be emphasized here is that while at one level, the regional is extrapolating to the national, even in the global. At another, it is the flavor of the local that continues to create the stories and bring in the audiences. I'll give you two examples. One is a film made 2 or 3 years ago called Zulfikar by this Bengali director Srijit. And there, what Srijit does is something I have not seen done, something which has not yet been attempted by any director trying to adapt Shakespeare. Zulfikar is a story about an underworld dawn set in the dockyards of Calcutta, the harbor underworld of Calcutta. So far, so good. I mean, even Vishal tried something similar with Omkara. He set it in the gang world, the gangster universe of northern Uttar Pradesh. That's fine. So this director, what he did is he combined Julius Caesar and Antony and Cleopatra. Julius Caesar now becomes a prequel to Antony and Cleopatra. So it's like two films in one, two Shakespearean plays in one. By the time the interval comes, the Julius Caesar story is over. The Zulfikar is the title character, the gang lord, played by Prasenjit, who's murdered by the conspirators. And around this time, there's the interval. Now, the Antony and Cleopatra part begins after the interval. So that is a unique experiment, and I found it very interesting. The second is a Malayalam film, Joji, and here again, Macbeth. It's an adaptation of Macbeth in the context of the backwaters of Kerala and the local politics. The local politics, the dynamics of the local gangs. It was so well incorporated that you had to be told that this is an adaptation of Macbeth. But one of the finest localizations of a Shakespearean tragedy that I've seen. Do watch these movies if you can. Also, there was this series called Mandar, a Bengali series called Mandar, which set the Macbeth story in the Sundarbans, the Sundarban Bhedis, where they have fish culture, where they have fish pisciculture, and again the intense rivalry amongst the various contractors of these fish ponds. That became the backdrop to Macbeth. So it is the local flavor that gives a kind of a special impetus to these stories. And this is found in the Indian Shakespeare films, in which the regional or the local has been a major source of their success. Whether it is the use of the Janapada folk music in the Telugu Gunasandari Katha adaptation of Lear, or the myth of Kelipatra from northern North Kerala in Karmayogi, which is an adaptation of Hamlet. The local tension between theatre and film cultures in pre-independence Tamil Nadu is encapsulated in this film. Rajapat Rangadurai. This is an adaptation of Hamlet, and around this time, when this film was made, there was this conflict between theatre and cinema. Theatre people felt endangered because of the rapid growth of the Tamil film industry. And this conflict between theatre and cinema was brilliantly shown in the play within the play sequence. I've seen Rajapat Rangadurai, and when the actors come to perform, there's a bit of meta theatre involved. The actors say, well, you people are acting in a film. Why should we act? We are theatre people. We are humble. We are low. Why have you invited us to perform a play? And then the Hamlet character tells them that no matter how advanced cinema becomes, theatre shall never go out of fashion. All right, you people who are performers, live performers on stage, you shall always have a part to play in our culture. So the conflict between cinema and theatre was wonderfully incorporated in this adaptation of Hamlet, Rajapat Rangadurai. Then in this all of you must see this adaptation. It's an Assamese adaptation of Othello, and the subtitle is "We Too Have Our Othellos." And the present day conflict of outsiders versus insiders. This is Othello is an outsider in a white industry, and in this film he becomes a kind of a migrant who has come to Assam, and that whole issue of this of identity politics. It I mean, it is Shakespeare. It is universal. It is also Indian. It is also Assamese. So this is the Assamese version, Othello, and these are some other versions. Um, Omkara, all right, and another. This I believe is a Kannada version of Othello, and of course Vishal Bhardwaj's Omkara, which brings me to Bhardwaj, Vishal Bhardwaj and his trilogy. Uh, Despite its global Bollywood reach, Bhardwaj ensures that all three films they are rooted in specific context, language, and mannerisms. For instance, Makbul, the adaptation of Macbeth, is set in the Mumbai underworld. Adaptation Omkara, which is an adaptation of Othello in the Badlands of Middle India. In fact, I corresponded with Vishal Bhardwaj about some issues that I had with Omkara. I felt that Omkara's alienated outsider status wasn't brought out in the film. And Mr. Bhardwaj acknowledged the fact in an email and he said that is right. But the fact that Omkara is a half caste, is not a proper Thakur or a proper Brahmin, but is born out of wedlock. That was an important track in the film. But because it increased the length of the film to a great extent, they had to leave that track out. But he agreed. Mr. Bhardwaj agreed that yes, this was a kind of a shortcoming of the film. Othello has been seen as too strong. If you remember, Shakespeare's Othello is very vulnerable. Shakespeare's Othello is extremely insecure about his being an outsider, which is not the case with Omkara. And finally, we had Haider. Haider is Hamlet, but relocated to the insurgency, the militancy torn Kashmir, and again some problems here in this film. This was too pacifist a film, and the fact that Haider allows his uncle to escape, he doesn't kill Claudius. Although Claudius is almost mortally mutilated in that bomb blast towards the finale, but Haider says there has been enough killing, and he allows Claudius to escape with his life. Again, many critics found this very anti-Shakespearean. But my abiding memory of Haider is the play within the play was in a typical Bollywood fashion turned into a song and dance sequence, the Bismil song, brilliantly penned by Gulzar and set to music by Vishal himself and wonderfully performed by Shahid Kapoor as Hamlet. So instead of a play within a play, we now have a song within a film. So this was the Vishal trilogy. Then we come to the diaspora films. Even the English language diasporic cinema, for instance, Life Goes On. Life Goes On is a film by Sangeeta Jain, and Second Generation is a film made by is a film three-part series. Both these films they are based loosely on King Lear and the nuances of immigrant Bengali life, Indian life, Indians who have settled abroad, and the difficulties they face with this kind of dual existence. Although cinema is primarily a visual medium, I feel most Indian filmmakers they have been attracted not so much by the visual quality of Shakespeare as by the narrative in the play, the plot content, the story element in his plays, and also to a certain extent Shakespeare's language. But as we all know, Shakespeare's plays have brilliant visual imagery in them. In my opinion, this is one area which filmmakers have sadly neglected. As in the West, the Indian Shakespeare film also has traversed a vast range of forms since the first moving picture. and we cannot really predict how the Shakespearean film is going to evolve in the next few years. But if I may conclude by saying that Shakespeare came to India with colonialism for the entertainment of the Sahibs or Firang masters, the expatriates, for their entertainment. And though he was required reading in the teaching apparatus of the empire, it was through performance, through amateur production in schools and colleges, and in translation on the public stage that he was popularized. Today, Shakespeare has become a household name. And I know at least of one Indian family where a son has been named Shakespeare, Shakespeare Sanyal. I'm sure he'll have a lot to live up to when he grows up. So Shakespeare has been absorbed into the Indian mindset thanks to these amateur productions done in schools, colleges, and on local stage. However, it is in cinema. Cinema also, if you remember, is a Western import. It is in cinema that Shakespeare in India has been truly homed, truly indigenized, not just translated and adopted and assimilated as our own. We deal with Shakespeare as a very homegrown product, whom we can transform and transmute. We can change his space and his place for our own purposes, and it's very obvious from the ways in which we manipulate and modify his stories and his characters. And it is virtually impossible to track all Shakespearean usage for every year. New cinematic texts are emerging all the time in several language cinemas. But I foresee a very exciting future where younger voices would give expression to their readings of the bard's work using their own idioms and their own technologies. The AI is going to prove a game changer. This is 2024. I believe by 2030, AI would transform the entertainment industry in a very unimaginable way. I don't know. I mean, the possibilities are mind blowing. That will probably require a separate course on its own. Thus, in the process, these young interpreters of Shakespeare, these young readers of Shakespeare, they are going to own Shakespeare, as their homegrown, as their own indigenous product, not as somebody who's an outsider. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. Dear students, the platform is now open for your questions. Uh,
I have deliberately confined myself only to Indian adaptations because, as I said, if you wanted a global perspective on Shakespeare from stage to screen, it would probably require an entire course.
sure. Ananya, you can go ahead with your question. Ananya, switch on your mic and ask your question.
Good morning, sir. Am I audible?
Ananya, sir, I'll read this question. I mean, he's
Sure,
typed
sure.
it, I suppose. Yeah. The way the Indian film industry is influenced by Western inputs, in the same way, have the Indians been able to influence the Western countries?
Not to the same extent. As I said, till a few years ago, Indian cinema meant only either Satyajit Ray or Minal Sen or Ritvik Ghatak, Girish Kasaravelli, Adur Gopal Krishnan, only a handful. But maybe thanks to the success of films like, the people like A.R. Rahman, RRR, and others, uh, the time is not far off when the empire would strike back, and Indian cinema would now, maybe soon we shall see Hollywood cinema full of these song and dance routines, and our own elements of Bollywood and other Indian cinema, they would soon start influencing European and Hollywood cinema. As of now, no, it's a very one-way process.
Yes, participants, I mean, you can switch on your mic and ask your questions. In case you have any difficulty, you can post it in the chat box. I'll ask the question on your behalf.
Any question, you're most welcome.
Yeah.
There have also been a lot of films based on Shakespeare's life. As you all know, for students of Shakespeare, there are at least 3 films I'd like to recommend. One, of course, is Shakespeare in Love, featuring Joseph Fiennes, who plays Shakespeare at facing writer's block. The other is called All Is True, which is directed by Kenneth Branagh. And All Is True is again based on Shakespeare coming back to Stratford from London. And the third is a film on the Shakespeare authorship question, which kind of poses the conundrum. Did Shakespeare write all his plays, or was it really Earl of Southampton who wrote these plays? So these 3 films must be seen by all Shakespeare enthusiasts.
Sir, I have one more question. Am I audible now?
Yeah, you are.
Yeah,
Yes.
Ananya, please go ahead. Yeah.
Yes, sir. Have Shakespeare been able to influence the Indian folk music? I mean, have we ever seen that kind of folk music where we get any kind of inputs from Shakespeare?
Folk music, I'm not too sure. Shakespeare has influenced Indian theatre in a major way, not just through his plays, but also through the staging of his plays. Prithvi Theatre in Bombay, the architecture of Prithvi Theatre is very like the Elizabethan theatre in the round without a front curtain and everything open to the audience. Folk music, I don't see how Shakespeare could have influenced folk music. Maybe adaptations like Atul Kumar's Pia Behrutia and other films, they have used Indian folk music to communicate Shakespearean ideas and emotions. But Shakespeare influencing Indian folk music required a greater expert than I am in the field.
Okay, sir. Thank you very much. It was a very good session, sir.
Thank you. I loved it. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Supan. That was really excellent, very well depicted, really flawless.
Thank
Really,
you.
I'm sure, without a trace of doubt,
I
that
wanted
all the
to show some
participants
film
have really
clips,
been
but
enriched,
then I thought it would be too long. I wanted to show some film clips from Indian films. I have a huge collection of them, but it would have gone beyond our prescribed time.
It's perfectly fine. It was just absolutely stunning, scintillating, I would say, rather. Really, very well done.
So kind of you. Thank you.
Sir, I mean, just one question from my side.
Oh, lovely.
I mean, when you portray all these Shakespearean characters, I mean, what kind of a preparation do you yourself make? How do you imagine all these characters in terms of time and space?
That's a very interesting question, Karthi. The character I had the most difficulty playing was Shylock. And I had this huge debate with my director. I wanted to play Shylock very conventionally, like a black-hearted villain who, is because it's easy to play a character like that. And my director insisted that I play him as an outsider, as an alienated outsider who eventually gets the opportunity to extract revenge for all these years of persecution on Antonio. So that was the character. I delved deep into the psyche of Shylock, and I grew my own beard. I wish I could share the pictures with you, but for 6 months I stopped shaving, and I lived with Shylock for 6 months, and that kind of made me impossible to live with, as my wife claimed. But I tried to understand, as you said, time and space. I thought of Shylock as I'm a Bengali. All right, I'm a Bengali living in Maharashtra, and well, Maharashtra has never really considered anybody an outsider. Maharashtra, but I try to imagine that if I feel a linguistic outsider, I mean, most of my friends spoke in Marathi, and although I read and speak Marathi quite well, but still I felt that immediately the moment they start conversing in Marathi, I'm being shut out. I'm no longer included in the shared experience. So I try to relate that feeling of exclusivity, that feeling of exclusion to Shylock. How would Shylock have felt day in, day out, being treated as an outsider, spat upon, shoved, kicked in the public, abused as a killer of Christ? How would he have felt? So as an actor, that's what we do. The personal experience we try to transmute into the character, as Stanislavski said in his book, An Actor Prepares. So I don't know if I've been able to kind of convey my preparation process, but this is what I did with Shylock. Other characters, they were easy. Claudius, I could understand his mindset, how he must have felt, because as academics, we read a lot. So I have read volumes and volumes on Hamlet. So Claudius, I could understand very well. But Shylock has proved to be the most difficult character to portray so far.
Hello, Subhant. This is John.
Oh, John. John. Okay, John.
Subhant, how did you prepare for Iago? He's one of the most intriguing characters.
I haven't played Iago yet.
You haven't played Iago?
No. We didn't do Othello. Othello we read, but we couldn't find a proper Desdemona. So,
Okay.
Mr. Vikash Khurana was to play Othello and I was to play Iago, but we couldn't find the heroine. So we dropped the project.
Okay. Your lecture was very, very vast and beautiful. Very enjoyed.
Oh,
I don't know how you could collect so much of information and pack it into an hour. Wonderful. Very well done. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Yes, Priyanka Singh and Somadev Roy.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning, Priyanka.
Sir, there's this one question which I like to ask everyone who is even remotely interested. Am I audible?
Of course.
Yeah. Please go ahead. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so there is this one question which I like to ask every person who is even remotely interested in Shakespeare, and that is, can you ever exhaust Shakespeare ever?
See, 500 years have gone by. We still haven't exhausted him.
Yeah.
In fact, because he's still the most popular writer ever. I believe 500 years after today, Shakespeare would remain as popular.
Really?
I think so. I was just teaching this essay called Author Function by Michel Foucault to my theory students. And Shakespeare is not really an individual. He's a construct. He's a space in which our own emotions, our own ideas, our own notions, our beliefs, they find reflection. So as long as we retain our humanity, our humanness, Shakespeare wouldn't really go out of fashion.
So could you name that particular quality which makes him inexhaustible? Can you put a finger on it?
Yeah, absolutely. See, I believe Shakespeare was God's answer to humanity. I don't believe in a superior being or anything. But if there's anything close to God, it's Shakespeare. He understood humanity like nobody else. He understood our motivations, our preferences, our sorrows, our joys, and he could express them in such a way that you immediately connected, you immediately bonded, identified with those characters. So Shakespeare, as long as we retain an iota of humanity within us, Shakespeare will continue to resonate. No two opinions about it. Does that answer you?
Okay, and one more question. One more question. Shakespeare, when he started, of course, he wasn't the Shakespeare that he became in his later years, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, which are the most Shakespearean plays among his all the plays?
Shakespearean.
And would you recommend reading his plays in a chronological order or just the best ones? I
Uh,
mean, I don't know.
Well, it depends on why you are reading Shakespeare. If you're reading Shakespeare purely for entertainment, start with plays like Midsummer Night's Dream, As You Like It, Macbeth, Julius Caesar. These are very reader-friendly kind of plays. But the later Shakespeare, especially Hamlet, Tempest, these really encapsulate the very philosophy of life. And I believe these are mature men's and women's texts.
Okay.
So, yeah, Antony and Cleopatra. These are for the mature readers. So I suggest you start with the easy to read plays first and then go on to the later work.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Priyanka.
Thank you
Soumya
for the
Dev,
presentation as well, sir. It was amazing.
next time I'll have some film clips.
Okay.
Good morning, sir, and thank you so much for a wonderful presentation and lecture. Sir, I would ask two questions actually.
Yes, go ahead. Soumya, have you muted yourself? Can't hear you,
Soumya,
Soumya.
are you there? I mean, there's some issue with his audio, I suppose.
I think he has
Kindly
accidentally
unmute
muted him.
yourself. Unmute yourself.
Yeah. Soumya, can you unmute yourself? Soumya,
Okay, in the meanwhile, if there's anyone else who would like to ask a question,
yeah.
you're most welcome.
Soumya, if there is any difficulty in the audio, you can post it in the chat box.
We even have the chat box.
I suppose, I mean, he's lost connectivity. Yeah, Soumya, yeah, you can post your question in the chat box. I suppose there is some issue with the audio at your end. You can post your question in the chat box.
Sir, am I audible now?
Yeah,
you're
now,
audible.
yeah.
Yes, thank you for the lecture, sir. And I would like to ask two questions actually. I was
Yeah.
going to Richard Schechner's concept of performance studies. Sir, as you said that before portraying Shylock, you haven't shaved for 6 months or so. Drawing on Schechner's theory of restored behavior, would you like to comment on your experience before portraying Shylock, sir?
As you know, restored behavior is very similar to Stanislavski's The Magic Eighth. And what every performer does, not just me, I'm a very small time stage actor, but I have read biographies of people like Laurence Olivier and Ross Richardson, John Gielgud, and other great Shakespearean actors. At least 3 to 4 hours before a performance. And remember, these are professional actors. I'm just an amateur hack artist. But these professional artists, they would kind of go into a kind of a shell. They would stop meeting others except for co-actors. And the beard, as I mentioned, is the exterior of Shylock. But there has to be an interiority matching as well. A kind of the real mindset. You have to start feeling like an outsider. You have to start feeling like a doormat, a kind of an alienated individual. You have to start all these were Christians, but they have to get into the Jewish mindset. A Jew in a white predominated Venetian society. So internally, you have to start inhabiting the character's universe. That's a very difficult process. Great actors like Olivier Gielgud, Nasiruddin Shah, they are Dr. Sriram Laghu. I've seen Dr. Sriram Laghu for preparations for Socrates in a play called Surya Pailela Mano. Okay, and these great actors, they are able to get into the skin of the character, become the character. They are no longer King Lear or Olivier playing King Lear or Gielgud playing Hamlet. They become Hamlet. They have become that particular character. So I wish someday I would reach that level of identification with the character. Till then,
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. And one more question I'd like to ask, which is, what is the difference between Shakespeare and